Greetings, historians, and welcome back to House of Ideas Historian. There are so many unsung heroes of the Marvel Universe. And no, I'm not talking about the superheroes or the mutants that we see on page or on screen. I'm talking about their creators, the artists, the authors, the editors, the men and women that birthed this universe and gave it to us. I cherish Marvel so much. So it's not just the stories that we read in the books, but their stories, the stories of the real life men and women that bring this world together for me. So if we're talking about creators, there's one man that we need to talk about, and that is Stan the Man Lee, father of the Marvel Universe. When we think Marvel Comics, we think Stan Lee. He has been around since nearly the very beginning, all the way back in 1939, when Marvel was still known as Timely Comics. In 1939, he wasn't the creative genius that we know, however. Stanley Lieber worked as an office assistant. His duties included filling up the inkwells for artists, getting lunch orders, proofreading the pages, and erasing pencil markings when the comics were completed. Stan Lee had always wanted to be a writer, however. So, in May of 1941, we see his comic debut in Captain America #3, under the name of Stan Lee, a play on his first name Stanley. Years later, he would legally change his name from Stanley Lieber to that of Stan Lee. In interviews later in life, Stan admitted that he was afraid of the negative stereotype that comics had at the time, and he was afraid that if he put his name on these books, it would negatively impact his writing career as a full-fledged author. In late 1941, at the very young age of 19, Stan Lee was promoted to editor. Stan proved to be very good at this, keeping a position as an editor or editor-in-chief all the way until 1972, when he took over as publisher. Stan took a small break from the comics game starting in 1942, when he went off to join the Army Signal Corps during World War II. He came back in 1945. After the war was over, the comic industry took a huge hit. Without the troops to send books to, the genre was just not as popular as it once was. Superheroes was a thing of the past. Romance, westerns, and horror comics were now king. By the end of the decade, Stan Lee was just burnt out. This feeling came to a head in 1962. DC had just released the Justice League, and Martin Goodman wanted to copy the success. He told Stan Lee to make a super team. Just copy the Justice League. Stan went home and told his wife that he wanted to quit. He was going to go the next day and tell Martin Goodman that he was through. Stan's wife, Joan, gave him advice that not only saved Stan's career, but changed the world. Her advice was simple. Make the team how you would like. Write what you want. If they don't like it, what's the worst they can do? Fire you? At least in the end, you wrote a book the way you wanted to. That book was Fantastic Four #1. And with it, the birth of Marvel's first family, and brought Marvel Comics into the Silver Age. Stan Lee went on to co-create almost every major Marvel character in the universe. Working with Jack the King Kirby, he created the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and the X-Men. With Bill Everett, he co-created Daredevil. And finally, with Steve Ditko, he created Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, Marvel's most successful character. Stan Lee's involvement in Marvel can cover an entire book, so I can't go into the amount of detail that this man deserves. but I would like to stress how important he was to the Marvel machine in the early 60s. Stan Lee was author, art director, and editor of most of the Marvel Universe. On top of that, he held a monthly panel called Stan's Soapbox. To help balance out the extreme workload, Stan created what was called the Marvel method to making comics. Stan and the artist would brainstorm what the story of the book should be. The artist would then go home and draw out the entire book, leaving all of the text box blank. He may have notes on how the story is running at the time, but then Stan would come, look at this book, and fill in all the blank text box with the story. Doing this would speed up the editing process immensely. Stan was an active author and editor for years. But finally, in 1972, we see Stan Lee write his final books, that of Amazing Spider-Man 110 and Fantastic Four 125. From there, he stepped down as editor-in-chief, passing the torch onto the young Roy Thomas as he takes up his new position as publisher. From here, he was the figurehead of Marvel, traveling all over, bringing better representation for the company, a huge personality engaging fans in many, many different ways. He was always lobbying for greater representation of the Marvel characters on the silver screen, trying to get a Marvel movie. But that is a story for a different day. Stan's story is far from finished. There are so many things that we could go on and on and on about, but I decided to cut it there. These videos are about the creators, and from here, as the publisher, his story takes a different route. Let me know in the comments below if you want to know more. I'll gladly talk about Stan all day long. His passing was tragic, and he is missed every single day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit me up on Facebook, on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments below, what's your favorite Stan Lee story? Is it his cameos in the MCU? Is it a book that he wrote or a character that you love? Let me know, hit me up, and as always, true believers, Excelsior, and till next time.